Publishing the Katana template that is shipped with Seneferu, which do all the automation of the shader and texture assignment and instances detection and a lot of things. So the first thing before we publish, we have to make sure that the Katana template generic task is already there. I will assign it to myself. Then I will go to Katana, set the task to current, and set it to in progress. Now we should load the Katana template from the project database. Before we publish this, we want to load the dependencies, to load the generic light and the shader library that we published before, or you can load your own assets if you want. When we do load dependencies, we will get the generic light and the shader library. Let's put the shader library here. Let's make it okay, and let's put the lighting here instead of this gaffer node. Now if we click on the show dependencies, this will show us all the dependencies of this template until this point, which is the all the shaders in the shader library asset in this case. Okay, now we are ready to publish by just clicking on the publish button and make a screenshot for the it's writing the files. Let's call this initial version of the generic Katana template. The second thing that I recommend that you do before proceeding with this, you can actually proceed now by working with this template normally, but I recommend that you change some of the nodes here to live groups, like for example the render settings and the look resolve and the instances detection nodes and the primitive properties nodes that are modifying a lot of things. This is for example copying some attributes and fixing some names to for backward compatibility between renderers and stuff like that. This is for example making RGBA color sets primitive variables to color 3 floats to make it supported in RenderMan. For example, if you want to render Maya Paint effects, you will need this node here. you need these nodes for the interpolation, for the open subdiv, and a lot of things. This is detecting Maya instances and particle instances. This is doing the shader automation and in render time to automatically assign the shaders and the textures to the shaders in render time based on the published assets and published textures. And this is the render settings where the AOVs are also configured. So these things you may need to modify them from time to time, or you may want to add versions to them every time you modify it for the project, or by adding something. You need to manage the versions without altering the whole template. So you can increment the version of this one while the rest of the template is as it is. So it's recommended that we switch this to a live group instead. To do that, we have to create live group tasks first for each one of this. So let's do that. I will go to the main project here and let's create some tasks. I will create live. Let me try to create multiple items. I will create 4 processes of live group generic, and add. Okay, we will call the first one instances detector, and we will call the second render settings, and we will call this primitive properties, and we will call this look resolve. Let's assign all of them to me and set them to pending so I can start working on them. This is the production manager detected that new assets or new tasks are assigned to me. And now let's see these tasks. What I'm going to do now is to, for example, to work on this, set it to current. This will connect the production manager and the task to Katana task control that belongs to Seneferu tasks. And let's set this to in progress. This is the look dev, and let's disconnect it and let's delete everything and publish this. Now this is published. I just did undo to get the next one. Which is just to make the view clear. Let's return back the connections. Actually, let's continue the undo and let's take this for example. The next one is primitive variables. Okay, let's make this one. The reason why I'm doing this because the reason why I delete them, because saving the live group will save the last group, so I want to make sure that there is no other groups in the recipe. So I will set this to current, and we may give it some color here, like okay, and let's publish this. Okay, and let's work on the next one, which is, let me first make the instances detection. Give it okay, and let's disconnect it, and as usual delete everything. As I said before, you just you don't have to do everything, but it's recommended that you make these things as versions and standalone live groups. If you are not going to modify them during the project, then you can just go with the template as it is without doing what I'm doing now. Okay. And finally, the render settings node. Publish. Each time you modify the global settings or the default settings for the production render and previews and things like that, you will need to come here to you will need to check out this, for example, this version of the live group render settings. You will modify it and publish another version and make the new version is the approved version. This will automatically will apply the new settings for any new recipe or new render that you are doing. Now we want to implement these in our template, but before I do that, I want to approve them first, which is something, if you are the supervisor on the task, you will be able to do. This will give me a lot of notifications now. These are just telling me that the Katana template is getting affected by the things that I updated. So since we know that, we will check this out, and let me delete these nodes that I'm going to replace now. Let's delete this group and this group. Okay, and let's now load the 4 live groups by selecting them and clicking on load dependencies. Okay, set it in progress. These are the 3 live groups, the 4 live groups. Let's put them in their place and in the same order. Finally, the render settings to this and this. Actually, the color coding are not saved in the live groups, so we can just color code them back. Just want to make sure that, yes, we have the shader library updated already, and that's it. Maybe we can also make this our gaffer node. Now we will publish another version of the template. This time our template is depending on the these multiple live groups. So later when we update any of them, we don't need to republish the whole template again and again and again. So when you update the template, you publish the template. When you update any of these groups, you publish only the live group and make a version, approve it, then it will automatically update the template, and it will give you a notification and revisit note like what you saw when I updated these things during this session. Okay, so now this template is now ready for production. It has all the lights, has all the things and the nodes that is needed to automate and translate any type of incoming geometries. By the way, when you do load dependencies for any asset that relies on this Katana template, what will happen is that the production manager will load the template and will ingest or will inject any incoming materials to the assembly node. Then the graph will do everything and will make the scene just render by one click. It will become a renderable scene by just one click of loading dependencies. So all the dependencies will be loaded. Then you can immediately start rendering and lighting and do whatever you want. Now I will approve the template, so it becomes available whenever it's requested. And of course, at any time, since you are here, you can click on any object and query the version of this node. Like for example, this is telling you that this is render settings version 1. Like this is look resolve version 1. Or you can select any node and this will show all the dependencies until the node that you selected. This will bring all the dependencies upstream that node. This is just for maybe debugging or any reason why you want this information about your recipe.